Guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another Adventure Force figure to take a look at, and this is actually the final Adventure Force figure of this newest realistic dinosaurs line that they've just recently released at Walmart, but this is the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And before we go any further into the review, I one last time want to say a huge thank you to John Saculo for being the absolute man and acquiring these figures to send to me as I could not find them in my area. So again, thank you so much to my buddy John for helping me out with these figures and helping us to make these reviews possible here on the channel. But as I stated, this is their Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it is quite clearly sporting a very Lost World Jurassic Park male Tyrannosaurus Rex paint scheme, which I think looks absolutely beautiful on the figure, and definitely a really nice look for this figure, which the figure overall has a very Jurassic Park inspired look to the Tyrannosaurus, but I'm going to go ahead and say straight away that they're not fooling anyone with this figure, and that this is most definitely a Schleich bootleg of their Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is a huge downside if you ask me, because so far every figure from this line, as far as I could tell, seemed to be an original sculpt or an original figure. They may have taken inspiration from other figures somewhere, with like certain things like the paint scheme kind of looking very similar with the Spinosaurus to the Papospinosaurus. But this one appears to be straight up a bootleg of the Schleich Tyrannosaurus sculpt. I think they've kind of modified it a little bit in certain areas. It's definitely a little smaller, but actually to show you that it is in fact a bootleg of that figure, we're going to bring in the Schleich figure. Now we will place it next to this one, and you can see again there's definitely been some modifications, as the Schleich Rex has its head kind of tilted to the side. This one's head is straightforward more. The neck actually does not sport these kind of osteoderm type looks. The top of the head doesn't really sport this kind of armored sort of a weird look, but the overall positioning of the body looks to be very similar. The foot sculpt looks to be very similar. One thing that you can see here that really shows you the similarities between the two, of course, the stance in general, but the very distinguishable shape of the back of the Tyrannosaurus. You can see kind of like this hump, and then it goes down a little bit hump there, and then it goes down, and you see that same thing here with the Schleich, with that hump, and then it goes down, and then that little bit of a hump, and then it goes down the back. So very, very similar appearance to both, but I don't know if I should really straight up say it's a bootleg, because maybe it's just a figure that was sculpted in a very inspired fashion by the Schleich Rex, because there again are quite a bit of differences. Even looking at the legs are very different looking as far as the sculpting. Like there's a little bit more of a crouched position on the Schleich version as opposed to this one's up a little higher, and the head sculpt in general does look quite different as far as like the way that this area comes back and curves around. You can see looks pretty different compared to the way that this one curves around. So I don't know if it is that it's a straight up bootleg or if it's maybe just inspired by the Schleich Rex. I don't really have a clue, but considering we know that Adventure Force has bootlegged figures in the past with the Jurassic World T-Rex Hasbro bootleg that they have, we know that they are not above bootlegging, but again, I don't want to straight up call this a bootleg. Even the arm sculpts do look a little bit different, so maybe it's just inspired from the Schleich Rex. I don't really know for sure, because actually now looking at the head sculpt in general, it seems to have a little bit more of a shorter face to it than the Schleich version, and more of a Jurassic Park type of a look, I think, than the Schleich version. So I don't know. Either way, they're super similar. Clearly, this was either bootlegged from the Schleich Rex or inspired from the Schleich Rex. I can definitely tell you that much is without question. But regardless, I am still quite interested to take a look at this figure, so let's go ahead and get a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see some pretty darn nice detailing up here on the head sculpt of the Rex, and I actually really like the tones of green that they've used up here for the head sculpt of the Rex. Definitely very nicely done, and I think the actual paint application is quite nice as well. You can see those stripes that run down, very again reminiscent of the Lost World Bull Tyrannosaurus Rex. You can see a little bit of a lighter coloration there in the palate area, nicely sculpted nostrils, and the eye looks pretty decent as far as the paint. It's a nice yellow coloration with a black pupil. It doesn't look super sloppy, and you can see it's kind of highlighted with a very dark black around the eye. Again, all very similar to the Lost World Jurassic Park style T-Rex. You can see a little tiny bit of sloppiness on the eye on this side, but nothing major, nothing terrible. The jaw does articulate, but it's very, very stiff. It's actually really hard on this one to get it open. but the inside of the mouth also actually quite looks like the Schleich Tyrannosaurus Rex even further, making me consider this as a bootleg. You can see some detailing there on the skin flap on the inside of the mouth, but it's nothing amazing, nothing to write home about. It's a kind of that same dark purple, like a very dark purple that we had seen on the first few figures. So they've kind of gone back to that coloration with this one. As we start to move up here into the head, you can see some pretty nice sculpt and detail as far as those scales go. And then as we come back here into the neck, lots of really nice skin wrinkling. As we move down the neck, very nice big bulky neck with lots of really beautiful skin texturing going on. Very nice scales and very nice skin wrinkling and everything in that area. You can also see a darker green up here start to appear, as well as some nice black striping going on, and then this kind of yellow, a very light yellow, that runs down the back. Again, all very reminiscent of the Lost World Jurassic Park male T-Rex. You can also see some decent sculpt and detail here on the underside as far as the scales go. It's like a light grayish coloration down there. You can see the shoulder blade a bit from the skin protruding from the skin there. Some more really nice skin detail right there. As we move down into these arms, right here look decent, nothing special. Some decent musculature in the arms, nicely painted nails as well. Clearly, again, not an accurate T-Rex in any way as this figure. You can see some more beautiful scale work here in the stomach region, some more nice skin folding and everything going on. Lots of really nice creasing right here as well. Again, you can kind of make out that very Schleich-like hump there in the back of the Tyrannosaurus. You can also see the hip bone, some nice muscle tone in the thigh region, a little bit of muscle tone in the calf, but nothing over the top. Decently sculpted out kneecap there, and then it transitions. It continues to have like this striped type of an effect, and then a little bit of a squiggly like effect right there, but you can also see a few different variations of green, like a yellowish green, and then a darker green right there. And then as we get down into the foot, it transitions to a very dark look. It seems like they've given it a very dark wash, and then kind of given it a mixture of that and a nice light green. And it looks pretty decent. You have some nicely painted nails as well, including a pretty nice gloss coat on them. And then we move out the length of the tail. Again, the underside looks very Schleich-like as far as the detailing on their Rex goes. Nice kind of skin stretching there off of the body as we run out the length of the tail. And the tail is actually pretty short, so it's not super long. Again, a little bit of a downside is the length of the tail, but I don't think it looks bad. And again, you can see the really nice paint. It kind of transitions to an entirely black tail out here with that kind of yellowish sort of a spotting here on the top of the dinosaur. And the opposing side looks almost the same because for the most part this Rex is in kind of just a neutral position. If you look at it right here, you can see that the legs are almost in the exact same spot, the arms are almost in the exact same spot, the head is almost completely straight forward, so you're not really going to see too much difference on this side that we didn't see on the previous side. So we'll just give it a really quick once over here. You can see how nice the sculpt and detail looks as well as the paint application. I actually really like the paint application of this figure. I think the paint application is beautifully applied, beautifully done, very nice and natural looking as a whole when it comes to this figure. So again, potentially a bootleg, most likely a bootleg, but with some modifications to it, but still a really nicely painted figure, I will say that. Regardless, it is sad to end these Adventure Force figures on the note of a bootleg, but it's still quite an interesting figure. As far as a length goes on our Tyrannosaurus Rex, if we move it a little bit forward, from the head to the tail, you're looking at about 10.5 inches or about 27 centimeters, and then for a height, about 5 inches or about 12.5 centimeters, somewhere in that range. And I will say I just realized one thing that is different about this figure in comparison to the last few, actually all of the others, is this only has one area of articulation. There are no articulated arms, no articulated legs, just an articulated jaw. So again, also very reminiscent to the Schleich Rex. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pachylovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our Adventure Force Tyrannosaurus Rex. And you can see next to these figures that this is definitely the smallest Adventure Force figure of the bunch, which is weird because you would think the Tyrannosaurus would have been one of the biggest, at least pretty close to that in size, but nope, it's actually one of the smallest, actually the smallest of the bunch so far. Hopefully we'll get more in the future, but as of right now, the Rex is the smallest, and I think the Velociraptor might actually be the biggest, which is just totally backwards. But hopefully you'll have a good idea of the size here next to these figures in comparison. So this Adventure Force Tyrannosaurus Rex is probably the weakest of the bunch just due to it having a bootleg-like appearance to it. Overall, if this would have been a 100% newly sculpted figure, I would have said the Spinosaurus would have been the weakest just because of the super goofy looking head, but we can't ever give credit to Adventure Force when it comes to something like this if this is in fact a bootleg. Again, I can't say for sure, but it really, really looks like it. I don't want to ever call someone out on bootlegging something when I don't have the absolute proof, especially when this isn't exactly the same sculpt as the Schleich figure, as there are either some modifications, like it's smaller, and there's definitely a few areas that are different on the sculpt of this in comparison to the Schleich Rex, so maybe it is just something that they kind of took the Schleich Rex and used it as inspiration to sculpt theirs, but it is eerily similar, I will say that, and considering we know Adventure Force does bootleg figures at times, it wouldn't be kind of above them, I would imagine, to do that, so it's really kind of up to you to decide if you think this is a bootleg or not, and if it's something that you would like to pick up or not. But as far as the actual paintwork goes, I think the paintwork is really nice on this figure and definitely sports a really cool, very similar look to the Lost World Jurassic Park male Tyrannosaurus Rex. Again, the sculpt isn't exactly what you would see on a male T-Rex from the Lost World, but it's close enough. It's pretty close, I will say that. And the paint application that is applied to the figure is really quite nice. I don't really want to comment too much on how much I like the sculpt or anything, because again, if it's a bootleg, I can't really thank Adventure Force for it. I should be thanking Schleich, and since I don't have any surefire proof telling me that it's not a bootleg, it's really just kind of up in the air. I have no idea. It's still a pretty fun looking figure, and again, at $8.88 at your local Walmart, it is not a bad deal, especially for some of those other original sculpts, which are all really quite nice, aside from the Spinosaurus's head anyway. But some pretty cool figures from Adventure Force, definitely something I did not in any way, shape, or form expect from them, as I'm not used to this kind of quality, and I really was excited to see them start to appear online in some images, and again, John Sikulo helping me out to acquire them and review them for you guys is absolutely awesome on his part, so a thank you goes to him one last time for sending these guys over to me, helping me get them and review them for you guys and add them to my collection. So if you want to pick this up, once again, head to your local Walmart at $8.88 for each of these figures. It is a really good deal for some really nice high-quality figures. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.